Hello, it's Mike from Dimensional Walking. How are you doing? So I'm going to do part two of the Dulce Underground Base. 3 weeks ago, I did part one. If you don't know anything about the Dulce Base, the Underground Base in Dulce, New Mexico, please definitely go and do part one first. It'll give you some background about it. It'll talk about a conference that I had went to and gained some pretty good information from. So anyways, so we're going to do part two. And what part two is going to be, it's going to be talking about, I will call them the characters. Some of the characters surround the whole Dulce situation, the whole theories and etc. about what is Dulce, what the thoughts were of researchers around Dulce. So I'm going to go over three people. And one of them is Paul Bennewitz. The other one is Phil Schneider. And last but not least is Thomas Costello. Okay. All of them had parts in it. I believe a couple of them knew each other. So there is some definite connections here. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about Paul Bennewitz. So Paul Bennewitz, what's interesting about Paul is that he owned a company called Thunder Scientific Corporation. And he was a contractor for Kirkland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And what he made is he made some special equipment and tools that were used in the labs, that were used in Sandia labs and some of the labs, also different labs that are on Kirkland. So that's what he did. I think he also supplied some stuff to Los Alamos also, for what that's worth. So anyways, Paul was very much interested in everything that was on the base. He was always keeping his eyes and ears open. Now, Paul, a good note is that Paul lived right next to the Kirkland Air Force Base. In fact, I've driven by Paul's house several times when I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was trying to do some research on the Dulce Base and Paul Bennewitz. So Paul's home at the time overlooked the base. It was like the fence was like within 100 and some feet from his house. So he had a wonderful view of the base and the Manzano Mountains, and he could see a lot of things. And I think Paul, story goes, Paul was outside. I don't know if he was walking his dog or having a smoke or whatever, but he was outside quite a bit. And he, like I say, he lived right there. And he started noticing these lights over the base, some really unusual lights flying around, up and down, around and through. So it really got his curiosity going. I think he also, started talking to some of the people that he knew on the base, and they said, well, they didn't know anything about, about the lights, etc., and etc., etc. So then the story goes that Paul also, he picked up some, I guess he had some equipment, some radio equipment, etc., and he started picking up some messages. And so the deal was he started picking up messages, and you started thinking there were messages from aliens, and it started talking about bases on the underground bases like Dulce and tunnels around the United States, et cetera, et cetera. So this kind of went on. He was picking this up, and he was getting really excited. And he also went ahead, and I think he knew a lot of people on the base, so he confided in them. And he started talking and telling them this about these connections. And he got all excited about Dulce Underground Base. I think he went up there and visited around, tried to get in and around the area to check things out, etc. I think there was also rumors that he had, there was a crash up there, and he had gone up there and thought it was a UFO crash. Nobody really confirmed there was really a UFO crash up there, etc. So anyways, some of these stories also got into the Albuquerque Journal and the Albuquerque Times at the then, and we're going back in the early 2000s. So anyways, as this story continues, Paul, I think the powers to be on the base started getting concerned because Paul was, I don't want to say spreading, I guess he was sort of spreading these stories, and they were probably pretty concerning to them. So I believe, and I'm not going to name names, but they started possibly feeding Paul some disinformation about what was going on. And that actually fueled Paul to even get more excited about this, et cetera, et cetera. Well, unfortunately for Paul, I think some people are starting to think he was losing his mind a little bit. He was getting really paranoid and concerned that these aliens, I think the story goes later on, and let me just check a couple of notes here, that he started talking about there was possibility that these aliens were gonna had some kind of scheme going on, and they were gonna subject the human race, etc. That he was gonna, this was gonna happen at a specific time and place. And so it was getting a little crazier and crazier as time went on. He ended up writing a paper called the Beta Project, Project Beta, I think it is, which also ended up being years later a title of a book by Greg Bishop called the Beta Project, which is Project Beta, which is an excellent book. Highly recommend if you're interested in Paul Bennewitz and all the conspiracy type theories. And some of them may be very, very valid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not using the word conspiracy to think that there wasn't some truth in a lot of the stuff. There definitely is. But anyways, the book is really good. So if you would like to get a little deeper into the weeds, I recommend that book. Anyways, so anyways, they really started, I guess, working on Paul. Okay, that's my feelings. They started working on him, and I think it caused some really mental type breakdown in Paul. I think he really took Lila's stuff seriously, and some of it probably was disinformation. Well, anyways, he got, I don't know if it was his family exactly. I don't remember the story he was admitted to the mental hospital locally in the Albuquerque area, and eventually Paul died. Not of anything super mysterious, I don't think. I think it could have been of natural causes, but it was kind of a very sad story because I knew 2 or 3 people that actually met Paul, and they thought he was really a really good guy. One of them was Greg Bishop that wrote the book, and he said that Paul seemed to be a really great guy, although he did seem somewhat paranoia, had a great deal of paranoia at the end of his life, so before he died. And so anyway, so that was Paul Bennewitz. He was in the mix. He had a lot of interesting stuff about Dulce Underground Base, and really interesting detail that he had gotten through these conversations he had heard between the military supposedly and the aliens. So anyways, do I believe it's all true? No, I don't. Do I believe some of it is true? Yes, I do. I really do. Because I do believe the underground base does exist or did exist. Is it active now? That I don't know. But anyways, that's Paul Bennewitz. Really interesting character if you'd like to read more. There's quite a bit of research. And again, he did the beta, a paper actually on the beta. He calls it the Beta Project, which has to deal with this communication between the aliens and the military. So anyway, so that's Paul Bennewitz. The next person I want to talk to is equally as controversial, is Phil Schneider. So Phil Schneider has got a rich history in underground bases. He supposedly was an engineer with the government that actually helped build several underground bases, and one of them was Dulce. But his even got more strange and wild because the interesting thing about him is, unlike unlike Paul, Phil actually went out as time went on and really started hitting the speaking circuit and talking about everything in detail, in very heavy detail. And so it kind of put him out there. It put him out there more than Paul. So Phil was out there, he's speaking to the public at UFO conferences, and it was some really interesting stuff. He was a very popular speaker. He would go around. I didn't see him in person, but I did see several videos of conferences. And it was very, I will say it was informative and entertaining at the same time. But one of the things that was really quite amazing was a story he told about Delsi. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you the whole story because I don't have time here, but the basis of the story of super interest was that he helped build this underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. It was like 7 stories or so down. All the different layers of the underground base. There was different things that were happening there, and it seemed that the deeper you went, the more kind of evil or the more horrible it was or horrific it was because of all these different experiments, all these experiments on people and even aliens themselves. And there was, of course, there was a whole lot of aliens there, greys and reptilians working supposedly with humans. And then, like I say, I think it was on the 7th level is where they really did all the bizarre stuff where they combined different types of species together to get kind of entities that were horrific looking. Now, I'll pause for a minute because I mentioned this in my first video on Delsi. This corresponded to some of the things he was describing, corresponded to what I saw when the Native Americans in Delsi approached me after the conference that I went to. And they showed me all these horrific pictures of creatures that were half human, half cow, half had gills like fish. These creatures had gills like, and they were horrific looking. And some of them even moved. And I think I even remember, well, some of them moved. When I say some moved, they didn't show me the video, but they described them, some of their movements and some of the noises they made. These were the Native Americans that had kind of caught us before we left Delsi after the conference, after the first Delsi conference. So anyways, I can kind of, I don't want to say I can confirm it, but I had seen Phil's videos years before. And when I saw, I guess the shock was when I saw these pictures from the Native Americans, and it's somewhat aligned with what Phil was saying. It gave me a double chill. Let's put it that way. Okay. So anyways, so Phil, one of the deals with Phil, so he told all these interesting things about the Dulce Underground Base. And then apparently there was, they were digging, I guess him and his crew were digging, I think they were trying to dig into another part of the underground base for some reason. And apparently they broke through, and they must have broke through into some place where there was a lot of, I guess, is reptilians. And I guess what happened was they started shooting and etc. And my understanding is that somehow the Delta Force, U.S. Delta Force, military special ops force came in and with weapons and started, shooting the aliens. And apparently a lot of the aliens, several of the aliens were hit and killed. And then there was a lot of the Delta Force that were killed. That's how the story goes. I think Phil said he was also hit by a special weapon that he later claims gave him cancer. Anyways, I don't think he died of the cancer, and we'll talk about how he died in a little bit here. But anyways, they had this big firefight at the base. It's quite famous. It's talked about quite a bit. Phil talks about it all the time, or did, and it was pretty extraordinary. Anyways, so that's Phil Schneider. Phil dies here in Oregon, supposedly. Now I confirmed that. I believe he did die here. I'm not sure exactly how he died. There were stories that he was murdered. There were stories that he got, somebody got him and basically almost beheaded him with piano wire. So that was pretty tragic, but he did die. He died in, I believe, in the Portland area, Portland, Oregon area. And that was kind of the end of it. I know his wife. I think I had contacted his wife and I had a couple emails back and forth. She is kind of still carrying on with some of Phil's research, and it seemed to be the feeling that she felt that somebody did something to him because what he was saying out in public. I don't know if that was ever proven, but anyways, it's a possibility, I'm sure. I think there's things out there that if people talk about it too much, they could be in trouble. I mean, I can tell you several people that I personally knew that died mysteriously, and they had some pretty interesting information. Now there's other people that have interesting information, have lived long lives and still are alive and never had a problem. One of the things I've always was told, and because I had friends that were in kind of a black ops role or were in one of the government agencies, they always said, hey, don't keep secrets. You write a book, or you go ahead and do videos, you talk as much as you can about it. And if you don't keep any kind of secrets, typically nobody's going to bother you. So anyways, it's when you have secrets that nobody else knows about and they don't know when you're going to tell those secrets, those are the ones that usually don't live very long. So I don't know if that means that Phil Schneider had more secrets that he hadn't told yet. But I know he seemed to tell a lot of things, a lot of interesting things, actually. Like I say, it was quite informative and quite entertaining at the same time. So anyways, that's Phil Schneider. There's plenty of stuff online about Phil. He's, like I say, he's very credible. He is the real thing. Phil Schneider did exist, and he was an engineer, and he worked for the government. So that all kind of lined out real well. So anyways, that's Phil Schneider. So let's talk about another interesting person. And his name was Thomas Costello. Now, let me tell you about, I've been writing, and I had a website. I still do, of course, Truth Seeker Forum, which is my original website, my original way I would communicate with the world. And I still do through Truth Seeker Forum. So it's about 13 years old. So as websites go, it's pretty old. Anyways, when I probably back, it was quite a few years ago. I'm going to say 2012 or 2013. I first started writing about Thomas Costello. Okay, I did some research when I lived in New Mexico. I went up into Santa Fe area and around and started talking to people. And of course, I was involved with the Delsi first conference there, Dulce Underground Base conference. And I talked about that in my first, in our first video here about Delsi Base. Anyways, I've done about 2,000 postings. Some of it is, obviously a vast majority of things I've written. And then there was other people that also wrote articles on the website. But one of the things that's really been fascinating over the years, I have had the most views. It's one of the most viewed postings I ever did was about Thomas Costello. And the most commented on one also. And of course, there's a lot of people that felt that it wasn't real, it was just BS, etc. And I would kind of tell you my conclusion, what I feel like at the end when I finish talking about him. So anyways, I guess at this point, I should also talk about something else called the Delsi Papers. This was a group of papers that kind of, I guess, surfaced. And I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if I wrote in my thing when it exactly surfaced. But I think it was in the 1990s, these papers surfaced. And they were kicking around, and I think they finally surfaced to the public in the 1990s. And I can't remember, the middle 90s, I believe, and I could be wrong on that. But these papers are really fascinating. If you get a chance, I think you can still get them on the internet. And anyways, it tells about, the crux of it is, it's about all these underground bases around the country, how they were constructed, and other really interesting things about underground, anything underground. It talks about all the alien groups that live underground, all the tunnels that are crisscross the United States and North America, and even in all the way through to South America even, etc. Now, some of my research in New Mexico kind of confirms some of this, because I had talked to several people, construction workers that actually worked in the underground bases, that actually in the underground tunnels. And they confirmed, and I trust them, they seem to be good sources, and some of them I knew quite closely, that these underground tunnels that went from Los Alamos to Kirkland Air Force Base, up to Dulce, and then out to California. Now, those are the ones they knew about. They actually worked in them and constructed them. So I pretty much felt confident that they knew what they were talking about. So that was one of the things that they talked a lot about in the Delsi Papers. Other things they talked about that I can able to confirm with you is that they talked about some of these tunnels ran into Salt Lake City, and they ran underneath Salt Lake City, and there was times in which creatures, alien type, reptilian type creatures would come out of these tunnels, or were able to get into certain areas. And interesting enough, I knew of two people that told me stories in Salt Lake City. One person was a security guard. Well, it was a security guard, and he used to guard under a parking garage that went down several stories underground. And it was downtown by the temple, by the Mormon temple. And he said that one night he saw an alien, he saw a reptilian seemingly come through the wall, and just stood there and kind of looked at him and walked back in through the wall. Now, there's been, in the Delsi Papers, they talk about these caverns, catacomb type caverns underneath Salt Lake City. And so then there was another story of somebody was walking by these parking garages, and they actually got a glimpse of another just completely different side of town, but a similar type thing. It was kind of an underground parking. This person was walking on the street, and something that looked like a big lizard, she described it as a big lizard, came out and looked at her and went back in. She said it wasn't a small lizard in the ground. It was very large. I think it was 6 feet or more, 6 or 7 feet, she described it as. So was that part of that underground kind of tunnel type caverns, etc. situation? Possibly. Anyways, so that is a little flavor of the Delsi Papers. They're really fascinating, just way wild, very entertaining to read. Other than some of the little side things that I can confirm, I can't really confirm too many of the other things in there. So, but there is many things in there that Phil Schneider does talk about in the Delsi Papers. That, I don't know if he's quite quoting them directly, or it just happens to be they both have that same information. So keep that in mind. But the Delsi Papers are interesting. They're long. There's quite a few. I don't remember how many pages, but it seemed to be in the hundreds of pages that I was able to find about them and read about them. So they're really interesting. So anyways, back to Thomas Costello. So the story goes is that Thomas Costello was a security guard there at the Delsi base, okay? And being a security guard there, he saw lots of stuff. And a lot of the stuff evolved around aliens, reptilian type creatures, grays, etc. And his story was that they were working together, etc. He also said that, you know, he had seen a lot of ships entering the side of Archuleta Mesa. Now, please remember that the base itself supposedly is Archuleta Mountain, but it's very possible they have entrances at the mesa. The mountain and the mesa are really close together, isn't it? Yeah, it's not hundreds of miles apart. They're maybe a couple miles apart. But some people say the mesa, the mountain is part of the mesa, etc. But anyways, they said that this Thomas Costello said that he had witnessed a lot of ships constantly going in and out, probably bringing supplies or whatever back and forth. So anyways, some of the other things, let me see here. Let me look at a few of my notes here. So he was saying that the Thomas Costello said that in the late 30s, the base actually was starting to be constructed. And there was engineers there, they had started building the base. Although I had heard it was actually in the 40s that they started building the base. And it was very close to the time that the Manhattan Project was going on, and they were building the nuclear bomb just south of there at Los Alamos. So I'm not sure what it. I don't even know if it's that interesting when it actually started. But one of the things is that as you may realize if you follow and look at UFOs, a lot of activity with UFOs here in America happened in the late 40s, just as the nuclear bomb was being developed. And I've always said, I think there was a tremendous interest. I don't think the aliens basically liked the nuclear bomb. I was told by an abductee that told me that they had told that person, I think it was a she, told her that the aliens were concerned because nuclear energy and an explosion of that type would actually kill souls, human souls. It would kill, and that really just, they didn't want to be part of that, or they didn't want that happening. So they were coming here to stop all that. And of course, I guess in theory, after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that ended that. Basically, there hasn't been any other bombs that we're aware of that were dropped anywhere on Earth. So my feelings is the aliens have stopped that, stopped us from dropping and doing things like that with nuclear weapons. So let's see what else. Well, Thomas Costello. Let me talk a little bit about him. I don't really believe there really was a guy called Thomas Costello, because again, I went up to living in New Mexico. I was able to quickly get up to Santa Fe and the Dulce area, and also the other communities between Taos and all those areas there. And I had the opportunity whenever I could talk to somebody that had some interest in those type of subjects and see if any of them knew Thomas Costello. And nobody actually knew him. He would have been an old man at the time, but there was nobody ever ran into, and I talked to quite a few people that ever knew of him. Some people say they didn't think he existed. They thought he possibly was a composite of another person with a different name, or a composite of several guards who had supplied some information, and they kind of somebody wrote and put it all together in one story. I think that's possible. I have a feeling that Thomas Costello isn't a real person per se, but I think there is truth behind what he's saying about the aliens, because I had heard other stories. I had a real good friend of mine, I won't name names, but she had seen an alien working at Los Alamos in one of the tunnels that lead out of Los Alamos, and actually saw an alien in there, a gray alien that looked like it was part of the team there. And I really believe her. So I believe there are the tunnels. I believe the base was there. I don't believe it's probably active now. I have no reason to believe that it is active. But anyways, so that's the three interesting characters. There are many more. I probably won't go into any more, but they were really interesting. And anyways, that's it on Delsi, part 2. So let me say this at the end, as I always do. If you need it, if you want to contact us, it's dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. And we would really like you to tell us what you would like for us to cover, because between Rainbow and myself, we have probably 100 years of experience in the paranormal, which includes UFOs, Sasquatch, dogmen, and many other things related to the paranormal. You can send us some stories, some interesting stories. If you have some questions, ask us questions. Please comment on our site here. And we need subscriptions. So please, if you like us, subscribe. And one last thing I like to read, and I'm gonna get my glasses on to read it. Let me see if I got it. Here it is. So again, I told you I wrote about Dulce and the Underground Base and Thomas Costello quite a while ago. So I wanted to read one comment I had. This is from a person, and I'll just straight out read it to you. I live in Dulce. I have been there my whole life, and this is true about the base. For years, there have been many lights up in the sky. You can see flying saucers hovering above the sky. And then it will fly off quickly back and forth into the side of Archuleta Mesa. Just so happens that a few nights ago, there was a low-flying plane that supposedly went into the side of the mountain to drop off supplies. So I don't know if that person knows somebody, because it's actually stating that he knew it was supplies. He put it in parentheses. That's only one of the many strange things that had happened here. Yeah, and one of the things I mentioned in the Dulce, the first one that I had done, was that when the Native Americans talked to me before we left Dulce after the conference, many of them told me stories of really strange things that were happening to them. I mean, there was a story about they were driving down the road and a UFO came and just picked them right up and took them somewhere, and had missing time. There was just so many different stories, and many of the Native Americans told me stories, felt and looked very fearful of what had happened to them. So I believe the Dulce area has all kinds of high strangeness that goes on there. And some of it is probably contributed to the underground base that is either there or obviously was there. But I still think the strangeness continues to this day. So anyways, that's it. And hope you have a great day. Keep watching us. We got some interesting stuff to tell you all. Bye-bye.